Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Wolok. My partner in crime, as always, Vasili Gianarakos, is back. Finally, good to have you, my friend. It's been boring to do these episodes without you. Not boring, but not as fun, you know? So
Yeah,
I'm happy to have you back.
I can imagine Yariv having to go like an hour like you did without me and just kind of, talking Flyers hockey in the dead of summer when there's not a lot to talk about
Right.
could be difficult. So
Yeah.
just the fact that you put those two out, I appreciate that. And I'm sure the fans appreciate it too, just that they had something to listen to over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, it's really good to be back. Feel recharged after the honeymoon. It was a great time in
Yeah.
Europe getting to experience that. But we're almost in the thick of things for Flyer season and hockey season. This will probably be like one of our last lighter episodes in terms of topics because
Yeah.
the next couple of weeks are really going to start hitting the ground running with training camp and everything to follow. So it's exciting to be a Flyers fan, just with another season of Michkov coming. Additions like Zegras, Rick Tocchet. There's going to be a lot of storylines that are interesting this season to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and for those who are wondering, because we're entering the rookie camp stage of this, I do want to give a shout out to Locked On Flyers with Russ and Rachel. They had a great episode with John Snowden on last night. I believe it was last night's episode, I believe, that they released. Highly recommend going to listen to that one just because it's like all John Snowden talking about the team. So kudos to them for that episode. They did a great job, and obviously watch this show, but it's a great interview and it gives a little bit of insight on how rookie camp is probably going to go, because it's probably going to be run by John Snowden primarily. I don't think like Rick Tocchet is going to be running rookies so much because a lot of these guys are going to be Phantoms players. So do recommend checking that out. Okay, let's do the usual spiel. We'll get right into topics from there. So just want to remind you, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for notification. Get notified when we release these episodes. And for the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes. Give us a rating and a follow if you can. Again, that is the best way to support this show. So if you guys have not done those things yet, please do so now. That would be awesome. Or at least when you're done this show. That would be awesome. Also, shout out to our sponsor, Gin Steaks at 4th and South. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's at 4th and South. Again, Jim Steaks. Also, Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them for your insurance adjustment needs. They will help facilitate the process between you and your insurance company. Make sure you get the best claim possible. Help you deal with all the paperwork and all the headaches that come with dealing with insurance companies. Again, Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. And also want to give a brief shout out to our partner, SportsSpider.com. Guys, if you're tired of searching for multiple websites, for sports news, SportsSpider.com has you covered. They collect the latest articles, videos, and podcasts from around the web and organize them by your favorite teams. If you want to stay up to date on our Philadelphia Flyers or the NHL in general, make sure to check out SportsSpider.com. The link is in the description of the audio and video versions of this podcast. Again, SportsSpider.com. Okay, so let me just go over our topics for the day, and then we'll get into them. So we're going to talk about the new salary cap implications just came out and some other changes that are going to affect how teams have to manage their rosters going into this upcoming season and moving forward. Excuse me. We're also going to talk about Lappy finding a new home. We're going to talk about the Carter Hart situation. So those of you with baby ears, cover them for that portion. And then the second half, we're going to do our top 25, under 25, but we are doing it a little bit differently. We're doing a top 7 plus an honorable mention or two for each position, and then we'll show a consolidated top 25 list, which is hard to do with this lineup. We'll go through that, and that'll be the show. And then, like Vasili was saying, next week is the week before the rookie games, so it will be a lot more interesting moving forward. So this is our last bullshit of a week type of thing where we really don't
Legitimate
have a lot.
hockey talk coming,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So we have legitimate hockey talk. Also within there, I guess that first topic does bucket in some Jet Luchanko speculation as well. So we'll get into that. So, okay, let's kick it off. So new salary implications, salary cap implications are coming in. So the rolling rule is now going to be coming into play, and essentially teams will have to be salary cap compliant now in the playoffs. So a lot of those situations where you had a player you knew was coming back, like the infamous Kucherov situation, there will now be a semi-compliant. From what I understand, it's supposed to be like your average salary cap. You can act your average salary cap hit is what you can bury. So if you have like a $9 million cap hit player, if your average salary cap for each player and like that's average of all the players is like, three and a half or whatever, $3 million, and you got a $10 million player coming back, like you're gonna have to be compliant going into the playoffs. You really don't have much leeway there anymore. You're going to at least have to be like 80% there compliant going into the playoffs. That does not count for players like Ryan Ellis, who is permanently, on IR, potentially eventually on LTIR or potentially being moved from the team. But it does leave you in a position where you can't completely, deal with that. What are your thoughts on that, Vasili? Do you think that's going to change too much of what's going on in the playoffs? I think it could affect some teams, but if you look at the teams that, were in the Stanley Cup Finals the past 2 years, didn't really affect them. It was more just like these rules that kind of popped up from like Vegas and Tampa Bay taking advantage
Yeah.
of it a couple times.
I think those are the teams that come to mind initially, right? Like your Tampa with the Kucherov situation, him coming back, them adding a bunch of salary, and then you get almost like a star player coming back for free because he was out all season. Similar things with, Vegas and Mark Stone, right? Him obviously going on
Yeah.
LTIR, allowing them to acquire Tomas Hertl, and then we all know what happened after that. So yeah, I mean, this was a long time coming in terms of the changes, where you would have to be salary cap compliant, in the playoffs as well as the regular season, obviously. I mean, if this was something that was put into effect for the regular season, there was a salary cap. I think my idea and my thoughts surrounding it is like, why wasn't this something that was always put into place? I think it only makes sense that, if you have a cap for the regular season, that same cap should essentially apply for the playoffs, considering it's the most competitive part of your season, realistically, right? You want it to be the most competitive possible. So having that extra, check and salary cap, being applicable during that time frame, I think it's just gonna allow for teams to be more competitive in the playoffs. You won't have those outliers like of a Tampa being able to do something like they did a
Yeah.
couple seasons ago. Same with Vegas. I think, it's better to carry it forward for this year as well, right? Because obviously it was going to take place and go into effect with the new CBA. They're kind of rolling it over, knowing that, hey, this is something that probably a lot of teams were looking to have in place as soon as possible, right? That's my guess into why they don't want to wait, until the beginning of next season and the new CBA going to effect in full. And they want to roll this over and have it start a year earlier. Just because I'm sure there's a lot of complaints from teams saying, how many times are, certain organizations going to kind of bend the rules with this LTIR rule essentially, and not being salary cap compliant. So I think a lot of teams are probably just fed up with this, happening so often these past, couple of years. And I'd imagine that this is why they put it into place, a season earlier. I think too, like if it's going to affect anything particularly, probably maybe trade deadline movement.
That's
Like
exactly what
there
I was going
might
to say.
there
Yeah.
might have been, certain teams that were obviously willing to take on a lot of cap because they know that going into the, playoffs, they don't need to be compliant, and then they'll just deal with whatever cap mess during the summer. But that's not something that can be done. So I do wonder if the trade deadline is going to become even less of a spectacle, even more
Well,
boring in a sense.
so that was my initial assumption, but like I think it could be like teams who were front runners because the player wanted to go there because they were the better team, they won't have that like leverage
Leverage,
over it.
yeah.
So it might be that like players are traded to different teams that will definitely be cap compliance. So like a team like Carolina might win the trade now because they always have,
Cap
cap
space.
hit. A theory like the Flyers, who not this year but next year will have an abundance of cap space. Maybe players get traded at the trade deadline to not good teams too, right? Because you don't really have the option to move them to a team that is up against the cap. So the
To your
only
point,
option you
yeah.
have are teams that maybe it's more wild card teams will end up getting them, like teams that haven't gone all in into a season, and picked up that difference maker at the trade deadline. So it will affect things. I guess we'll see. Might have
Yeah,
not much
ultimately,
of an effect too.
ultimately you have to be compliant. Like my only thought is that, hey, to your point, or even what you said, maybe certain teams that would have not been in the front running to get one of those high end players, they're it's almost forced, like forcing them to acquire that player because this team that was going to trade them to Vegas, for example, now has to trade them to the other team because Vegas is not cap compliant. So
Right.
I think it could maybe force the hand of certain teams to just deal them to teams they may have not done so in the past.
Yeah.
I wonder too if it's going to force maybe other teams to give up other players that they might have not been willing to give up to
True.
acquire another
Great
player
point.
because they have to be cap compliant. So like
That's a great
maybe
point.
in the past, right, we saw these deals always happen with picks and prospects because of the fact you had to be cap
And you want to
compliant.
keep your roster together. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe now teams that are desperate and they're thinking, hey, we do need that one extra big piece. Well, you know what? I'm willing to trade this guy that makes 4 million
Yeah.
to try to get that $8 million player because
Maybe
I
it's
think he'll
like,
he'll be more useful in the playoffs, right?
yeah, like maybe in a situation of Dallas and Carolina, maybe it's Dallas trading Jason Robertson for Rantanen, right? Like that's just an example of
More
like,
star player trades because you have
right,
to have the salary going back that matches what's coming in, right? So
right. Yeah, like you're more willing to get rid of an RFA that you probably won't be signing, which I understand the situation with Jason Robertson is Jim Nill said that he doesn't want what happened to Toronto to happen to him with Robertson. So it seems like Robertson is still being like, the focus of trade over there because they don't want to lose him for nothing. So you might see a lot more of those type of trades, like Owen Tippett or even a guy like Bobby Brink. Let's bring him up,
hockey
right?
trades, yeah.
Right. So Bobby Brink is an RFA. Maybe the Flyers aren't 100% that they actually want to return him, which was my whole thing with Frost is like, I didn't think he was going to get the contract he wanted from the Flyers. So like, if you have that type of situation, you might look to flip that guy to a player who's like a guaranteed contract, and the other team might be more willing to because they have to be cap compliant. So you're right. It's a very good point. It might change the type of players that get traded in the trade, right? Because the deals can still be done. You just have to be cap compliant. You can't ignore
You
that.
can't trade this future prospect that isn't going to play for the next 5 years.
Right.
You kind of have to trade somebody that's actually on the roster,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Unless you have the cap space. But let's be honest, most of the teams that are
Do not,
making a
yeah.
run, they won't have the cap space theoretically. Most of them, right? Like Carolina is a team, they always have cap space for now. Yeah, so that's a big change. The other change is the double retention. So think about like the Kevin Hayes situation where the Flyers traded Kevin Hayes to the St. Louis Blues, and the St. Louis Blues traded him again to the Pittsburgh Penguins and retained again. Now, I believe you can still do the double retention, but you can't do it immediately. Like you have to retain, I think the number is 75 days. I'm not sure. But they have to hold them for a significant period of time throughout the season before they can trade them again. So you can't do like the same day trade anymore and like double trade retention in the same trade. You can still retain, but you're not doing those three-way trades with a double retention. So for whatever reason they went after that. That one is a little weird to me because I'm like, who cares? If a team is willing to do that and that's
And
their
eat money,
choice,
yeah.
yeah, like why not? Like what is I would like to know why they tackled it. There has to be a reason. I don't think they would do it just for no reason.
Maybe it was
But
more of
clearly it
an,
came up.
well, you got to think about CBA negotiations, right? It's going to be NHL and NHLPA focus. So my thought process is that probably the PA is the ones that lobbied for that due to maybe on the behalf of the player. Like maybe the players aren't um, very happy with the fact that, hey, I can get traded and somebody retains this portion of my salary, right? And then the next day, that same team that just traded for me can now trade me again and another team, and they can retain that salary that my prior team already retained on, and then trade me, like in succession like that twice, right? So I think maybe it's more to kind of protect the player, whereas like a team might not be as interested in acquiring them if they can't retain on them a second time, because maybe they know in like a year or two they might want to move them again, or whatever the time frame is. Like let's say you acquire a player hypothetically, right? And then the team acquiring them says, okay, I acquired them this summer. Now I acquired them to be kind of a trade chip for me at the trade deadline, right? I'll retain more money and then I'll trade them again and get another draft pick or something.
Yeah.
If their like value maybe gets rehabilitated. So maybe the NHLPA just didn't like that, and the players just didn't like the fact that, hey, like if I'm getting traded to this team, I should need to be on this team for a certain amount of time before they can actually trade me again. That's my maybe assumption. I mean, obviously we don't know, but I think it's a weird one. I think if anything, it's going to restrict more trades and more
Yeah.
movement between teams, which I think in the NHL there's already so many handcuffs in terms of
Right. I
trading and
don't
player
like it.
movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just open it up, let teams trade players how they kind of want to. But I see it from the side of the NHLPA and the player that they probably were lobbying. The PA was probably lobbying
Good point.
in this manner for their players, just because they don't want players to be traded from destination
It
so
is like
quickly, right?
kind of embarrassing. It's like you're reducing the player's value perception wise
Even
twice.
more. Yeah,
And not
exactly.
only is he getting these cap eaten, but like this team doesn't want the whole cap and that team doesn't want the whole cap either. It's like, okay, so nobody really wants him.
Yeah.
Flyer, I
And
mean,
they're forced to move, between two cities potentially in a short amount of time. So
yeah, yeah, you're right. And I mean, Ryan Johansson, I guess, is an example of that too. The Flyers did that with his salary.
yeah.
Um, so, oh no, I think they had 50. No, it was no, they
Nashville
had
retained. Nashville retained.
Nashville retained, but they took the entire contract of Johansson, right? They didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
Colorado didn't retain on that one. For some reason, I had a memory they did, but that guy. Yeah, there was a ruling on that. We never even talked about it on the podcast where he got nothing. I don't think we. Oh yeah, we did talk about it, but man, that guy played that so poorly. All you had to do was
Was just show up.
go to
Yeah.
the AHL and then get your surgery. Like that's all you had to do. You didn't even have to play. All you had to do was allow them to send you to the minors and then
Yeah.
go get surgery, and you would have got all of the money.
I mean, I
He
think
didn't
that's
play
just
anyway.
yeah, I think, if his agent wasn't fired after that, if I don't know who gave him the advice on how to handle that, but
I
if
was
that was my agent, that would probably
It was
be a
so
problem.
obvious that that was going to happen. I knew the whole time the Flyers were going to win that argument. I was like, you completely shot yourself in the foot with that. It's like with
Yeah.
unemployment here in America. Like you can collect unemployment. You pretty much have every right to get unemployment unless you were completely negligent. And in this case, you can see that he was being negligent. And it's like, dude,
Yeah.
you're
This
not going to get your
injury just
money.
magically appeared,
Yeah, you're not going to get your money, bro. It's like most players have some kind of injury or something. It's like you're not even trying. Like you clearly set that up. So, anyway, so maybe it's a chance to avoid more of that stuff too in general. I don't know. There are some other changes. There's a relaxation of the player dress code as well, and the ability for players to endorse wine and spirits. Okay. Good for them, I guess. I don't know.
More money, I guess, for the
I don't like
NHL.
alcohol, so I'm not gonna cheer that one, but good for
Hey, to
them
be
at least.
fair, like the relaxed dress code, I gotta say, like I understand, like you don't want to, like I'm not a fan of the relaxed dress code. I think, hey, like if you're getting paid millions of dollars, man, show up in the suit at least.
Yeah,
Like, come
I think
on,
they look
man.
good. I mean, they look
Yeah.
good. They look
If
good in suits.
Hey, when I used to play, even showing up to like shitty minor league AAA games, we'd show up dressed up in like a dress shirt, like,
Sure.
it's like
Yeah.
have some etiquette,
I imagine we're not gonna see like super casual dress up. We're probably gonna see more like extravagant stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Like not what's his name from Toronto? Uh, Austin Matthews has like this dress up appeal. And I have a feeling this is going to be one of those things that might end up being policed by the players themselves, where like if guys don't show up looking at people are going to be like, dude, you look like a
You're looking like a bum right now.
yeah,
Come
you
on.
look like a bum. We work in tech, dude. Like, don't nobody wear like I told you I had an interview. The first guy I talked to had a baseball cap and a t-shirt. The VP had a t-shirt on, and he's cursing the entire
See,
interview. You know what I
fair
mean? Like I
enough.
get it.
Fair enough. I work in tech. My bosses are super laid back. Like they don't come
Right.
into the office whenever we go to the office and stuff, they won't come in like dressed up. But I personally, I always, if I'm in a meeting that's important, if I'm going to the office, dress shirt, dress pants, I don't know. I just feel like personally, if I'm going to be somewhere in a professional setting, I should look professional. But
Well,
that's
I
how I
think
am.
that's why I think that it's gonna be like self-policed. It's gonna be
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
can be
Do
low
what you
key,
want. Do how
do
you
what you
feel,
want, but you
basically.
might get made fun of if you are coming in looking like, sweatpants and a t-shirt every day. People, to game days, people are gonna be like, dude, it's
You're
one thing to do it to
making you're
practice, or
making
who
$8
cares?
million dollars, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. What'd you make? 12 million last year? See, that's the thing is like I think most players are still gonna come in semi dressed up. Like I
I
don't,
think they're cognizant of that fact though, that hey, like I'm playing a game, I'm making all this money, like I should at
yeah.
least look somewhat
Yeah,
presentable entering the arena.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But it's something the players wanted, so so I'm good with it. The endorsing of wine and spirits. I mean, that whole thing is like if the players can get paid, cool. I'm like kind of against alcohol, um, just because I think it's like such a not for everybody. For majority of people, it's not a problem, but I've seen it destroy people's lives. So like, not huge on it, but they're advertising gambling every game, and that destroys people's lives too. So
That's even worse,
it
yeah.
yeah, it's kind of it is what it is. It is what it is.
They're trying to get the revenue
Yeah.
streams though any way they can, I
Yeah, you
guess.
never know. And some guys like, they're not making $8 million a year. Maybe they're making $2 million a year and they can advertise like liquor
Hey,
or whatever.
I'm sure
Have
in
their own liquor.
Toronto, being from Toronto, I'm sure if they made some sort of like Austin Matthews themed beer or some sort of player, I'm sure that would sell quite well. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And so this is actually I just saw this right now. I didn't have it on our topic list. I didn't realize this actually. The NHL shift to an 84 game regular season will also be implemented in 2026-27. So the season will officially be growing next season, not this upcoming season, but the following season by 2 games. That means preseason will be shorter,
Yeah.
and there will be more games for the first time. I can't remember if they ever did 84, but I don't think so.
I think they
Um,
had the last before 82 was like 78 or something. I don't know
yeah, I
exactly when
think
that was
yeah,
though.
I can't remember either. There was a time period where they did have more games, but first time in the modern era, we're going to have 84 games a season. I know some people are going to be against this. I am not, just because they're getting rid of the preseason games. So what I suspect how that will affect things is that preseason outside of probably the final 2 games will be all like young guys. Preseason
Which
games
makes sense.
will be more of a tryout. Um, and I personally I love hockey, so I don't mind the season being 2 extra games of regular season hockey and less preseason hockey. Because by the end of preseason, you're kind of sick of it anyway. You're kind of like ready for the NHL season. So, we're going to get that earlier. So, but I expect they're still going to want to take a look at guys. So they're going to have to figure out a new way to utilize what I assume will be 5 games for the average team in preseason, something like that. So they'll have to figure it out. Probably 3 to 4 of those games will be dedicated to young guys. So that's a pretty big change, actually. But that's not for this upcoming season. That's for next season. Then there's also so the big one that could affect the Flyers this year, and I'll be honest with you, probably every team has a player that they would like to have in this situation to some degree. But probably not every team would take advantage of it. But we know the Flyers potentially would. So this was tweeted out by Puckpedia. It has not been confirmed. I did see Charlie O'Connor try to confirm it through the Flyers, but was told that as of right now, they are assuming this is not the rule in place, but that they are thinking about moving up the player exemption for being under 20 to be in the AHL to this upcoming season. Now, there is no final word on this, so we don't know if it's happening, but from what I understand, it's still being worked on between the NHLPA, the NHL, and the CHL. I could see how the CHL would not want this to happen because they're already losing a bunch of players to NCAA. And this would mean they would lose another handful of players to the AHL. Having said that, I would imagine that the NHLPA is pushing for this pretty hard. And I was thinking about this earlier today because those players are under NHL contracts. So they are now part of the NHLPA. And their argument probably is like, hey, you're withholding our players from playing professional hockey and earning money. And the way they lost the NIL rule, I think they might end up losing that this year anyway, because we were told it wasn't happening this season. All of a sudden, it's coming up as a maybe. So I think things are actually swinging the opposite way. We do not know, and I think it's wise for the Flyers to assume otherwise. But obviously, the biggest name for this year would be Jet Luchanko to fall underneath that. There's nobody else within the Flyers organization, only Porter Martone really, that would have fallen into this camp. But Porter Martone obviously didn't sign his contract and is playing NCAA hockey. So this could affect Jet Luchanko. Time will tell. And to be honest, we will probably, if we know, it might take another week or two to find out for sure if that rule is in place. Um, so what are your thoughts on this, Vasily? And I'll also say this actually before I turn it over to you. I think a lot of people are assuming that the best place for Luchanko is the AHL, and I do still really believe that a lot of people are sleeping on Luchanko, and I think that the Flyers might be their thought process might be like, yeah, well, we kind of see him in the NHL anyway this year. So for them, it might not actually be as big of an issue as it is for like the internet crowd who believes he's not good enough and that he only made it because of Tortorella's bias or whatever. But it's still interesting, and having the luxury of setting him down would be the best regardless.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting rule. I mean, my initial take, just in terms of the rule in general, it's probably best for the players to have this put into place. Like if you're a player that's up and coming, was just recently drafted, it's probably in your best interest if this rule goes into place because there might be a situation in the future where it would be best for your development to, play in the AHL over playing in the OHL and kind of being trapped, in the CHL until you turn 19 years and older. Like a lot of players and like Luchanko essentially has been the last couple of seasons here.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's a good point. Like the NHLPA is probably pushing for this in the sense that, you're stopping players from potentially, turning pro, playing pro hockey because, they won't actually be able to do so in the AHL until they reach a certain age, right? Like they're only NHL eligible basically until they're, 19 years of age or whatever it is, and they can, play in the minor league. So, yeah, I think the NHLPA is probably pushing for it that way. I do wonder, like the CHL will take a hit already on top of this with the new rules for the NCAA and college players. So it's almost like a double whammy for them. But I kind of wonder from their perspective too if they're just like rip the band-aid off and like let's just get used to this new normal because this is what it's going to be like. So we might as well just do it starting this season as well and just get used to it because the longer that the more you prolong it, it's not going to change the eventual outcome, right? So maybe that's their perspective, who knows? But I think for the Flyers, like it would be a best case scenario for
Sure.
them.
Definitely.
And probably most of the other teams in the league as well, right? I would imagine for all teams it's the best case scenario if this gets implemented this season. Just because firstly, you don't have to go another year dealing with that you know kind of ambiguous situation where you might have a prospect that's not good enough for the NHL, but he really shouldn't be in the CHL. And
And he's
that
not going to the
AHL,
NCAA.
yeah, exactly. And that AHL spot's probably perfect for him, right? So, yeah, I think for a lot of teams, it would solve a lot of problems with some prospects. So we'll see if it happens. Interested. Yeah, like I don't know if the AHL necessarily is the best place for Luchanko. I think he has a pretty I think he has a pretty good shot to make the team with the
Right.
Flyers. Like my thought process has been this: if John Tortorella, who's a really hard coach to impress, is gonna like you that much, and I don't really care about the center depth. Like I know they didn't have a lot of centers or anything, but I just look at a hard-nosed coach like John Tortorella that does not like, I don't say does not like young players, but does not favor young
Doesn't trust
players.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, he does not favor young players in his lineup very often. So for him to show that, you know, type of kind
Confidence.
of a yeah, that type of confidence to Luchanko, like in that role. I just think it probably bodes well for him with a coach like Tocchet too, right? Like I imagine, if you can impress a John Tortorella, you could probably impress Rick Tocchet doing a lot of similar things in training camp. So we'll have to see how Luchanko performs in camp. But I think, yeah, there's definitely a possibility he could, make the Flyers. Just look at their center depth, right? Even with a Zegras, it's still not completely solved. You still potentially could have holes there. So I could totally see him making the team if, he performs really well and fits in with certain players and they show chemistry. So we'll see
Yeah.
what happens. But if he doesn't, and let's say, he doesn't make the NHL team. He's kind of just a whisker away, and this rule does go into place. Having him in the AHL, that's going to be the best path for his development, right? Because that's the next step for him, and kind of after being in the CHL, if you're not going to go to the NCAA. So I think
Yeah.
for both parties, it'd probably be the best case if it was to be implemented. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because the European guys don't have to deal with this. Like the Flyers could bring Jack Berglund into the AHL. They could bring, actually, I don't know about Verhonen now because he's a NCAA player, so he wouldn't be coming anyway. But guys who are playing over in Europe, they don't have to
Yeah.
deal with this. They can play down there early if they want. It really only limits the CHL guys, which is like kind of weird. And this is just one player exemption. And for next year, when it for sure will be in place, I do think about a guy like Jack Nesbitt, who I'm sure a lot of people are assuming that he has no chance to be playing in the AHL next year. But it all depends on how he does this year, right? Like he's a really big kid. He went through a humongous growth spurt. We don't know how he's going to grow now in the OHL. If he's like a 100+ point player down there, they might opt to do it with a guy like Nesbitt, where he's also a two-way guy who's very physical and, he might be a good candidate for an AHL development project. We'll see. But I think with Luchanko, ultimately, if it does happen this year, it is the best case scenario, right? Because then you don't lose anything. If even if he makes the team out of camp and you notice that he's not quite ready halfway through the year, you can put him in the AHL. Or if you think he's borderline, you don't have to force it. You can put him in the AHL and have him work his way up to the NHL throughout the year, which maybe is ideal regardless, since that's the ideal case with most young players who are
Put the
like
carrot in
border.
front of him and kind of see if he can chase it effectively. I
Yeah,
mean, I think it just gives you a lot more flexibility with your roster. Like
for sure.
you're not forced into like, oh man, this kid's on the bubble. We really like him, but like we don't, we want to, we're now kind of forced to keep him because we don't really want to send him back to the CHL and he's so close anyway. So let's just kind of force feed him into this NHL
Right.
roster, right? Like I think, yeah, just for his development in general, it'll be best because you don't have management having to force a decision either way. So.
Yeah, and for a lot of people who are like, I consistently hear that like Luchenko does not project to be a number one center in the league and all that. Mike Richards was not a number one center by the same standard. Like his highest point total was 80 points in 79 games, point per game player. Exceptional player. He played top line center here. And, you wouldn't really call him a true number one center. It's like I kind of put Jet Luchenko in the camp with Mike Richards as that type of guy who's like a two-way threat, who has ability to be a point per game guy, excels more in the playmaking department, is physical, is not that big, is a face-off guy. Like this is all what Mike Richards was. So, and Richards, I think he came in at 20 years old. Or was it 21? I think it was
Might be 20. Yeah.
20 or 21. And he didn't come in and like light the world on fire. He had
He had like
34
30 points or something like
34
that.
points in 79 games his rookie year. His following year in 59 games, he had 32 points. So he had like a slow progression, then eventually broke out.
Yeah, all I remember from that Richards rookie season, he had a really, I think it was late in the season, he had a hat trick against the Islanders. I remember watching that a long time ago, and
Yeah.
people be like, "Oh, he's the next up and coming player for the Flyers."
Well, he had an it factor. That's
Oh,
the
of
thing about
course.
Richards.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
When he came up immediately because he impacted the game in so many ways, not just offensively.
and he was just hungry. He wanted it, right?
Yeah. Well,
So,
that's kind of how I see Luchenko. I don't know if he's going to be Richard level of like winner. Richards won at every level.
yeah.
He also played for the Kitchener Rangers, though. He played for an elite program. Luchenko's coming from a team that
Different
is like,
players. different
Yeah,
players, right? Like I think Luchanko's going to rely more on his speed and probably his passing
definitely
ability.
different players. Yeah.
Richards was more physical, but like I see your analogy in the sense that like it could be pretty similar in terms of like the impact that type of center can make for your team, right? Like
Yeah,
they can both like Luchanko can have an impact similar to a Richards. It might not be the exact same way, but it could be a similar thing in terms of okay, this guy's impacting your center position. He's not a true number one, but he's like a 1B,
yeah,
and you have, you can kind of put him out with anybody else who's a decent center, and you have a pretty good
right.
combination there. So
Exactly. And those are the type of players that do usually make the NHL early. Maybe they don't come in and they're not Macklin Celebrini. We're not expecting him to be Celebrini, right? But it doesn't mean they
yeah,
can't come into the NHL at a young age and be highly effective, especially because he's a player that's effective in multiple ways, not just offensively. So, um, it is the type of player, which is why the AHL ideal kind of pops up, right? Like, and to the point, Richards did play a long playoff run with the Phantoms before making the NHL, right? And so did Carter.
won a Calder
Um,
Cup. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, we'll see what happens. I kind of expect like Porter Martone to take that route at the end of his year, this upcoming year. Like, if he's wise about it, he won't come right into the NHL. He'll do what Bump did and get acclimated to pro hockey. But he might opt to burn a year, and they'll let him do whatever he wants because he's a six overall pick. So, Martone could come in and burn a year of contract playing one or two games, and then start his rookie season. But he is better off playing in the AHL. So, but Luchanko got that taste. He did not too much, but he had 15 games or 16 games in the AHL this past year. So, and he did not look at a place at all. And by the second half of that in the playoffs, where things got more intense, he was near a point per game player. So when I look at all of that together, I'm like, there's a good chance we might not worry about this rule too much anyway if it doesn't come into play. He might just be part of the NHL roster in general. So, but we'll see. That's why I'm so excited for the rookie games. We don't even know if Luchenko is healthy enough to play in them because they haven't mentioned that. But hopefully his
Yeah,
groin
yeah.
situation. Jim Jackson brought that up on the show too. You brought it up before he did, but we'll see because groin injuries are tricky, and that will definitely hurt
Hopefully it
his
was
chances of
just
making the team.
hopefully it was just being precautious throughout the summer and he
I
can
think
get
so,
into
but
some of the games. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
yeah, well, we're gonna get into a lot more young player talk in the second half anyway. So let's move forward. So the next piece of news is our favorite. Actually, he is beloved. Wasn't a beloved coach, but is a beloved personality and former member of the Flyers. Ian Laperriere officially is out of the organization. He is moving on to the New York Islanders as a pro scout. He did initially get hired as an advisor by Danny Briere. He obviously was removed from his head coaching position. John Snowden is now going to be taking over that position. Um, so Lappy's moving on to another organization, which is kind of weird because he's been here for so long, and he's
It's like
very, very much
2009.
beloved. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
basically.
guess in his mind, he's like, I'm going to go in there, make a big impact. And like maybe he's thinking, like, I'll do what I did with the Flyers. Everybody loves me anyway because they do. Like, he's a very lovable
Yeah,
personality.
maybe he can kind of sift his way through the Islanders organization
Get
similarly
back into
to how
coaching. Yeah.
yeah, right. Like start off as a scout, do a good job, potentially move into other roles. I mean, I think for Laperriere and for the Flyers, obviously really long tenure for Laperriere with the organization, in a lot of different
Yeah.
capacities. I think it was just, about time in the sense that like weird situation to be kind of kept on an advisor role after you're let go and kind of
Yeah.
fired from a position. So I'd imagine
Mhm.
it's probably the best for both parties to move on and kind of just have a fresh start,
It,
right?
it shows how much they love him, to like
Oh,
lose your
definitely.
job and stay on salary.
It doesn't usually happen to many
Right.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say this: do not count Lappy out for ever being a good coach, because we've done that to coaches before, and coaches like players. He's not an old guy. That was his first head coaching job. Like, he probably learned a lot from it. He's going to go to another organization. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if you hear that he's the head coach of
Yeah.
the Islanders like farm team in like 2 years, and then all of a sudden, or he's like an assistant coach for the Islanders or something like that. That wouldn't shock me. And just because he wasn't very good as an assistant coach at the NHL level doesn't mean he won't be a good NHL coach eventually. A lot of times you have to learn how to be a good coach, and he wasn't like a coach throughout his life, right? He was a player that converted to this. So, and just like Yogi that we brought in to be our, our skills coach, he was a player who, I'm sorry, our offensive coach. He was a player who became a skills coach, and then inevitably under Tockett, offensive coach, slash power play coach. So it's like you evolve as an employee, as a person. So good luck to him, and I hope it works out for him. To be honest with you, not so much because screw the Islanders, but at the same time, hard not to root for Lappy. That's all I'm saying. Okay, next piece of news, and I'm gonna give credit to Anthony Sanfilippo because he came out with this before David Pagnotta came out with this, but and everybody's going assuming that David Pagnotta released this information first, but he did not. Anthony Sanfilippo did. So Carter Hart's situation is growing. According to Sanfilippo, there are as much as 12 teams interested in his services. There is no official word on any of the five players returning. It could take, and this is my guess, but also what Sanfilippo said, could take about maybe even half the year to figure this out. There might be a suspension in place for players, just like a standard 30-game suspension for this. But it seems like the interest to get Carter Hart, which is what I've been saying for a very long time, to get back in the NHL is very high, and the Flyers are one of those teams interested. Wherever you stand on this, morally is not really that interesting to me. We can talk about it in the reality of why teams would want him, and the reality is he was leaving for 25 years old. He was one of the best young goaltenders in the world. He won goaltender of the week like 2 weeks before he found out that he was being indicted for the accusations. Obviously beat it in court now technically twice, and that goes for all of the players. Now, there's a lot of information out there you guys can siphon. You can have your opinions on whether he deserves it or not. I'm standing the case of if the legal system got through it and you were not being arrested and you're not being charged, you get to move back on with your life. That's my opinion on it. Forget the morality of it or whether you think it's disgusting what he did or any of that. I totally can understand and empathize with that. But what people do, you will be shocked at the type of stories that you will hear that athletes have done. So I would not judge just him on that. If you're going to just judge him and the other five guys, know that there is lots of that happens that you never hear about. So as far as I'm concerned, if he is coming back, people might not like this, but I would bring Carter Hart back into the organization. Vasili, I don't know if you agree with me on that. But my thought is that I would move out a goalie for sure to bring him back, even though he has missed a significant amount of time. So you have to account for that. But the skill level is there. And even listening to John Snowden on Locked On Flyers, when he was talking about Carson Bjarnason, he mentioned two goalies, Carey Price, in comparison to Bjarnason and his aura as a goalie, how he looks like a pro and how he has these goaltender instincts. He mentioned Carey Price. He mentioned Carter Hart. So that should give you a little bit of an indication on where the organization views Carter Hart and that they would still be high on him. Is he likely to come back? I don't know, because on some end I would expect him to want to go get a fresh start. But I do imagine the Flyers will be in the conversation to try to get him in there because we do not have a good goaltending security. I mean, at all. We all know that.
Yeah, I mean, this situation in general, right? Like, I think just to preface, obviously nobody would want to be in the situation like that was brought into the court and that was brought up. Like nobody wants that to happen to
Sure.
anybody.
Yeah.
But it went like that's like a terrible situation. Nobody would want that to happen to anyone in general. But to your point, right? Like this case goes through the legal system. That's what it's for. These guys are found not guilty. So at the end of the day, right, like this goes through the legal system, they're not guilty. Um, if they were charged and they were guilty, obviously they wouldn't have the ability to be able to re-enter the league like this and resume their careers. But because they're not guilty, that gives them the right to do so. So in that situation, I think, you know, Of course, the league is going to allow them to potentially return, especially if there's interest amongst these players between, teams. Like, they're going to definitely allow it, and the reason being is they could potentially be persecuted as the league. Like the NHLPA, for example, could go to the league and say, "Hey, like these are guys who were a former members of our association that were former, players. Like we could potentially sue you over this. They were found not guilty, right?" So I think there's a lot of legalities involved. The NHL probably is realizing, hey, these guys are not guilty. So eventually they have to be reinstated. My guess is as good as yours in terms of when that will happen. I think none of these guys, until they're officially reinstated, can be signed, obviously. So we'll see. I would imagine there'll be some probably type of suspension. That just is how it goes with these type of things when you're re-entering after some sort of like, I don't want to say punishment or like rehabilitation, but like something like that, right? Where you have to maybe go through some like program or who knows, maybe what they'll put in front
Sure.
of these
Yeah, good
guys,
point.
in
Yeah.
front of what in front of these guys' plates in terms of like counseling or like stuff like that they might have to do. But yeah, I imagine it might be like you said, like half the season you see like these guys come back around like trade deadline time or something like that, or some of the players at least that have any interest from NHL teams. I mean, Carter Hart is the top of mind just because he was previously like a top 10, top 15 goalie in the league. So obviously teams are going to have interest. I think if you're the Flyers, right, he was your property for many years. You saw him develop within your system, in your environment. I think for them, they would want to pursue bringing him back due to that, right? He probably is still friends with a lot of these guys that are on this team, to be honest with you. Just because this happened doesn't mean those relationships corrode. So there's probably players on the team that are like, hey, we'd love to have him back. He was found not guilty. This was a whole
Yeah.
situation. This is a situation that, he maybe shouldn't have even been involved in, whatever it may have you. So we'll see, but I would also look at it from Hart's perspective. Like he probably might want a fresh start. Maybe coming to Philly would be not to say like fresh wounds, but like he went through a lot at that time, under the guise of this organization. So maybe he kind of just wants to clean the whole slate fresh, come back under, a new team, new organization.
Also,
Well,
maybe one that's winning at the moment.
yeah, exactly. That too. Like, I mean, if you have the Edmonton Oilers that just went to the Cup, for example, interested in your services, and perhaps Connor McDavid calling you saying, "Yeah, like maybe you should come join our team," versus somebody on the Flyers, you might have to think twice about that,
Yeah.
right? In terms of your career. So we'll see where that goes. I do think though that even if he does come back, like I know I saw rumblings online, like it's probably going to be a two-way deal where they'll have to start in the AHL just due to the fact that they'll need to be some conditioning, right? You haven't played pro hockey in this long. We want to see you get some reps. So there'll probably be some
I
sort of conditioning factor, maybe not two-way deal, but at least a
Yeah,
conditioning
conditioning
stint
stint.
where
Yeah.
you have to go down to the AHL, play like 10 games, show you're back in game shape, show you're like, still
Well,
at that same level that you previously were, because no matter what we can say, and he was a really good goalie 2, 3 seasons ago, but you can fall off quick in hockey, you can fall off quick in the NHL. So there's always a chance that he comes back and he's never as good as he once was,
a
right? So
hundred,
that's
100%.
that's a factor. So we'll have to see. But I would imagine, if the NHL is going to reinstate these guys and there's 12 teams interested, he will get signed at some point here.
Well,
So
that's the thing. There's going to be a bidding war over him. So, to some degree, I don't think he's going to be offered like a 5, 6 year deal or something. Sam Filippo mentioned like maybe he's the only one being considered for like a 2, 3 year deal. So
yeah.
maybe that is who wins that war, is who's willing to
Who
give
gives
him.
him the third year, the fourth year, something like
Right.
that.
I mean, considering where the Flyers are in the organization, and let's say it's not able to be happy, like not, you can't do it until like later in the year. The Flyers can kind of play out and see what's going on, because right now, like Erson and Vladar, neither one of them have taken the reins. Yes, they do have Bjarnason, they do have Zavragin, but they still would need like a surefire starter in the NHL over the next 3 years or so. So again,
Yeah.
I don't know if he's even interested in coming back here, but I do suspect the Flyers are interested. Like, I was listening to PHLY, and I'll leave names out of it, but somebody was saying like, "Oh, he lied to the Flyers. They're not going to want him back because he's a lot." I'm like, you people really have to take their political biases out of this stuff and think about it in a professional sense. How could he have lied about something and then win in court? It actually shows that he was probably telling them the truth, and that they also had some inkling that maybe he would come back to the NHL in general, not necessarily to their team. So they probably were like in their mind, if he does come back, maybe, you only have Ayerson signed at 1 season left, as an RFA. You only have Vladar for 2 seasons. You are in the position to bring in another goaltender. Do I think it'll be Flyers? I don't know. I think we'll have to wait on that. But I do see the temptation from his point from his standing, like exactly what you said, Vasili. It's like not only would he want a fresh start, but he could also go to a team that's a surefire like playoff contender. Even if they have another goalie, he can go in there and beat
Yeah.
that guy out. And like you even think about. Not that it would be Toronto, they have two goaltenders, but like, a team like Toronto is desperate to win, right? And they're like, oh, well, or a team like Carolina, who I think,
Edmonton, Carolina. There's a
right.
lot of teams that could use a really good
And
goalie.
Carolina is a
So
small market too. And they're in the South of America. So it's like, you have to like consider where he's going to play and, the visibility. Maybe Canada is not the best route for him at the same time. You know what I
well,
mean? Because
all I
his
know
story
is
is more well known in Canada than it is in the US.
yeah, like I think politically in Canada won't matter as much. I think it's more just the fact that Canada, like in terms of the hockey coverage, like the NFL is the NHL in Canada. You know what I
Right,
mean?
exactly. It'd be everywhere.
Instead, yeah, if he signs with any Canadian team, it's going to be a huge major story. I think if he signs with any team in the NHL, it's going to be a huge major story, but it won't be as covered nationally in the media.
Right.
If he was to sign with an American team versus a Canadian team, like if
Yeah.
he signed with the Leafs or Edmonton, like this would be like it's not even going to be on a sports center. Like it's going to be on CBC or CTV News, like Carter Hart, accused in Hockey Canada trial signs with NHL team. Like that's how big of a story it's going to be. It's going to be on like national news. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Whereas I don't think that would happen in the States
No, it might
at
happen
all.
like
Like
in the
I don't think Fox News or CNN's running a Carter Hart story. Like
no,
it'll show up on ESPN Sports Center, but like
maybe.
here, yeah, but that's what I mean, maybe. But here it would literally show up on like 6 o'clock news. That would be like the third story on the news
Yeah.
system.
I don't even remember the Carter Hart story being on ESPN like
Whereas
in
like,
America.
whereas like,
You know?
dude, like if you were in Canada, like CTV is like one of our biggest news stations. They were covering like almost like every couple weeks they'd have an update from some guy at the courthouse, like, oh, this is what's happening with the Hockey Canada trial. Like it was a segment on the news. So
Yeah.
like, yeah.
The worst thing about this is that it's gonna be a topic of conversation for a while, probably.
Well,
Even if
yeah.
he signs somewhere else, you know what I mean? People are gonna hate him for not signing here or resent the Flyers for
Or
not
say why
signing.
the Flyer, like if he starts
Yeah,
playing
and if
well,
he
why the
signs here, there will
Flyers?
be a group of people who will be like, "Why? How could they?" And most of that's just going to be
Look
on
at the
Twitter
Flyers, they don't
or
care about,
X. Yeah,
you don't care about people's rights and shit like
right.
that.
That's the worst thing about the whole situation, as far from a hockey standpoint, is that it's just going to be drama. So the Flyers will have to think about whether they want that in here too. But at the same time, like they're clearly desperate for a goalie as well. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I am
It's
not
interesting. I'm
anticipating.
real
Yeah.
interested to see what happens. Yeah.
I'm not anticipating him. Like I'm not walking into the season being like, oh, we're gonna get Carter Hart back this year, or at all.
Yeah.
But we'll see what ends up happening. Like I would not be surprised if he signed somewhere else, like at all. And he's just like ready to move on and start somewhere fresh. He's kind of had to do that over the year and a half anyway. He's moved on from the team as it is. So, yeah. So that's it from that. And again, credit to Anthony Sanfilippo who broke that first. We'll see what happens there. We'll definitely let you guys know. And I'm sure it'll be everywhere as far as hockey news, like on X. It'll be everywhere when there's some kind. There's also the other players around it. Like McLeod is a good player. Like where is he gonna go? He probably will also be offered a contract. Dylan Dubé, I could see being offered a contract. Even maybe Alex Formenton. Who's the last player?
Uh,
I'm forgetting the last guy.
yeah, I'm not too sure off the top of my
Yeah,
head, but
I
it's all
forget.
good.
But yeah, every one of those players could probably play in an NHL lineup. So, it's going to be a story. Like, let's be honest. So we'll see what happens with that. Okay, just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for notification. Get notified when we release these episodes. And for the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes and give us a rating and a follow if you can. Again, that is the best way to support the show. So if you have not done that so far, please, please, please do so. We will humbly appreciate it. Okay, just want to remind everybody before we move into the rankings part that there is the Flyers rookie games. They will be in Allentown, and they will be Friday, September 12th at 7 p.m. and Saturday, September 13th at 5 p.m. at the PPL Center in Allentown. I'm very excited for this. We're going to be playing the Rangers rookies. I believe that's what we did last year as well.
Last 2 seasons, yeah.
Yeah, so it will be interesting. We're going to see a lot of young guys playing against other, pro or semi-pro level young players. Mostly, it's going to be guys. We don't know exactly what those rosters will look like. I do suspect Jack Nesbitt will be part of that rookie showcase.
Yeah,
As,
likely. I mean,
as
he's a
well.
CHL player, so typically they are. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll get. I mean, we obviously won't see Porter Martone, but we should see Jack Nesbitt here. I don't know about the Europeans.
Any NCAA
Yeah,
players you wouldn't see. Europeans, I think it depends just when their leagues
r-
might start.
right,
So
exactly. Like I would not expect Zavragin at all.
no, yeah, definitely
Yeah,
not.
maybe Rahonen, maybe. No, he's NCAA now, so
Yeah.
no. Jack Berglund's a maybe for that as well. Um, so we'll see, but it's going to be interesting regardless, because there's a few NCAA guys mixed in there, so we won't see everybody from the list we're going to go through, but should be fun, and I'm excited about it. All right, let's get into anything you want to add there. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, rookie games are going to be fun, and it's always exciting to kind of get a look at like the next tier of prospects. So
Yeah, yeah, I can't wait. Plus, it's the first time we get to see like Flyers uniforms.
in a
Uh,
while, yeah.
yeah, that's when you know like hockey season is like back, which is awesome. So okay, well we're gonna go through. So Vasily and I both did top seven. We have honorable mentions as well. For goalies, we obviously didn't even have seven, which kind of showcases the lack of
Yeah, depth
young
there.
depth there. So they probably will have to get that fixed eventually over time. But we'll start with the wingers. And let's just do mine and yours and wingers. We'll talk about both lists. We'll just go through each one, each position, and then we'll show people the top 25 overall. So if you
Yeah,
guys
yeah.
are listening, we're doing a screen share and you can view the list, but we will go through the list. So my top wingers, and again, this is players under 25 throughout the whole organization, pro, non-pro level, Europe, everything included. So my wingers are as follow: Michkov, Forrester, Martone, Bobby Brink, Alex Bump, Nikita Gabrankin, Jack Murtag. Honorable mention Samu Tuomala, and then I guess some people could probably throw in a Shane Van Sagi there. Real quick before we do Vasilis, just want to add in the way we kind of did this is like trying to balance their projection with where they currently are right now and where we think we'll be. So obviously these lists evolve. So while they are a current standing, like when I show somebody like Tyson Forrester above Porter Martone, that's not like I see him as having a higher ceiling than Martone. It's kind of where they are now mixed in with where they will be. Something like that. Do you want to read yours out or you want me to just read everything out, Vasily?
No, I can read mine. We can
Yeah, go
alternate if
for
that's
it. Go
cool.
for it.
Yeah, so wingers on my end, it's honestly pretty similar to Yariv. We just have a couple differences. So we both had Bichkov number one. I had Martone second. After that, Forrester was third. Then Bobby Brink fourth. Alex Bump fifth. Nikita Grabankin sixth. Samu Tuamala seventh. And then my honorable mention was flipped with your Reeves. I had Jack Murtag as my honorable mention, and he had Tuamala. So a couple of slight differences. It's mainly the same guys. Really, our biggest difference is essentially just Martone and Forster, and I guess Tuamala and Murtag, right? So at least for me, I had Martone above Forster, and reason being is mainly just the upside and the fact that he was picked where he was in the draft, right? Like he's a guy that projects to maybe be that top line type of winger for you. I think Forster could get to that. That's like his ultimate ceiling. But that would be like a best case scenario, whereas you probably view Forster more as like a really, really elite and high level second line winger who might get you like 70, 75 points, whereas Martone, I think, will be that like elite first line type of winger for you. So that's the differences between our wingers there.
Yeah, no, I think that was great breakdown. And yeah, again, like what he was saying, the reason I had Forrester is because of his elite two-way game. I gave him the edge, but obviously Martone has the higher ceiling of the two. And next year, by this time next year, I could very well have Martone above Tyson Forrester in that group. It wasn't like a die on the hill for this guy type of situation. I kind of struggled with that one. Um, and then the Samu Tuamala. So the reason I picked Jack Murtagh over is because from what I understand about Murtagh, he does seem to have like this top six upside to him. Um, and Sammy Tuamala's a little bit fallen out of favor with the Flyers. So like I could see even people picking like Van Sagi over Tuamala because of Tuamala's like standing with the organization where they don't love his two-way game. And while he's had the offensive game, he didn't have like his best season last year. He didn't jump in development. So for me, I kind of put him in as an honorable mention and moved Murtagh above him. That was my thought process.
Yeah, and I mean it makes sense, right? Like Murtagh was a guy that within a lot of draft lists was actually projected to go in the first round. So
Right.
could be a good reason to have him there above Tuamala. For me, to be honest, my reasoning is a little less analytical. It's kind of more just based off what I've seen of Tuamala. Like I just what I've seen from seeing him in the AHL, and then just past training camps. Like I think there's like a tenaciousness to his game.
Yeah.
He has a really nice shot. He's been in the organization a few years already at this point, so I think it's not to say it's make or break for him soon, but I think in general you'll want to see him, get some sort of shot with the Flyers soon, or he might be one of those guys that, is shipped out or ends up getting moved in some sort of other deal. So I kind of just have him there in the sense that I just want the Flyers to give him a shot at some point. So I don't
Yeah.
know if we're gonna see it, but it would be interesting, I think, to get him into the lineup. Obviously, if he earns it too.
Yeah.
But just for me, like his shot was always something that I thought was
It's
kind of
a
was a
very
really
good.
good, yeah, really good release just for where he was picked in the draft in the second round. So.
Yeah, yeah, and Murtagh also has a great shot. So we'll see. I mean, Murtagh could end up falling out of favor too. So I kind of gave him the edge, but like Vasili said, he's got the experience. What's also interesting is that we both have like Bump and Gabrankin as like the top AHL guys on this
Yeah,
list.
behind Brink.
Yeah, behind Brink, and it's interesting because like Brink's also really good. So it's like you'll see the top 25. I put that one together myself, and it's difficult. The top 25 is very difficult with this group, which is why we did it by position first, because we're a little bit comparing apples and oranges with positions in an overall list. So that's why I wanted the breakdown of this first before we did the top 25 itself. So the centers. So my centers top is Trevor Zegras. Obviously, 260+ point seasons is no joke as at a young age, and has the highest ceiling probably of the entire crop here of centers. We'll see if he can get back to his game, but even if he's a 65-point player, that's still really good. So I felt very comfortable keeping him at number one. I had Jet Luchanko at two because he's like the next guy to go into the NHL most likely, and I believe he has like that 1B type of potential, like Vasili was mentioned earlier. Then Jack Nesbitt after him. I'm very high on Nesbitt. So interesting about this list is I had Denver Barkey as a winger initially, and then I saw Vasili put him as a center, and I was like, you know what, dude? You got a point there because I think there's a chance that he's going to be trying out for a center position. So I was like, let's both have him at center. So I am very high on Denver Barkey. I think he's a dark horse to make the team this year, not necessarily at a camp, but to be like a call up guy. I hear the way, like, even I hear the way they talk about him, the way he made such an impact. I heard him talked about in the interview with Locked On Flyers. John Snowden talked about him, and his readiness and his compete level. He just seems like one of these guys that's kind of like an anomaly. You're like, I don't get it, but I bring him up because he reminds me of TK. TK, nobody thought he was going to make the team his second year at camp, and he just was too good and made the team out of camp. I don't think Barkey's on that level, but I could see him making a very large impression on the organization this year in Dev Camp and the rookie showcase, which he didn't get to play in last year. Jack Berglund, I've been semi high on him for a while. I think he does have that middle six spark in him, and obviously with the big showcase over the summer, kind of see him as pretty high. Carson Dorward, I want to give him some credit. I think about the fact the Flyers sending him over to the rookie showcase that's happening now. The fact that he was one of the biggest NCAA prospects available as a free agent, and he was able to play with NHL players, like just completely transitioning over. So I want to give him some credit because I don't know his game that well, but he does seem to have a lot of good tools. And I don't know what his like actual ceiling is, but he does seem like a guy who could also be like a dark horse to make the Flyers, where like I kind of am penciling him as an AHL guy, but also wouldn't shock me if like he's better than I think.
Could be a
Um,
fourth line type of center.
right, like could be like this year even. And then Heike Rahonen, I'm really high on. I see him as a higher ceiling than Dorwart, but he's still like a little bit away. But I just love his overall game, his like complete two-way kind of truck. He's got this like heavy body type of player, can play, make, shoot, everything. I think he's going to evolve very nicely. Then my honorable mention is Cole Knuble, who I think if he continues to do what he did last year, could move his way up this ranking substantially. He had a monster year in the NCAAs, but he has to do it again for me. And I suspect he'll be coming over to pro hockey relatively soon, maybe within the next year or two.
Yeah, so that was a good rundown of your list. For me at center, I mean, all the players are pretty much similar, just kind of rearranged. So I have Zegras first. That's pretty much a no-brainer considering the rest of the list. It's all guys that have little to none NHL experience. Really, when you put this together for the centers, it kind of illustrates how the Flyers have a real lack of center depth under the age of 25, like 25 and under. Like they
Yeah,
like at least top end, right? Like a lot of these guys aren't projecting to be like your number one center, but they have guys that might be like a 2, 3, 4, for example.
shows how
But yeah,
huge the Zegras acquisition is.
definitely
Honestly,
without Zegras, I mean, this would be a not a great list. Even with
yeah,
him, it's decent, but
yeah,
like without him, it would be really bad if you're looking
yeah.
at just like overall depth for the centers.
Especially at the pro level. Yeah.
Yeah, at the pro level, yeah, it wouldn't be great at all. But anyways, so Zegras first, I have Luchanko second. Those are pretty much the no-brainers. And then after that, it gets a little different in terms of my list versus Yariv. So I have Nesbitt at third. I just think that where they selected him, obviously, in the first round, trading up to get him, all that kind of factors into that positioning for me. And then Berglund as well is after him at fourth. I just think the summer showcase he really turned some heads, was kind of cementing himself as that first line center option for Sweden going into the World Juniors. So I think you have to take note of that. And same deal with Rahonen, right? Like he was playing first line center for Finland at the World Junior Showcase as well. So I think just for both of those guys, cementing themselves at that showcase tournament, having good showings, and then probably being in like a 1C role at the World Junior Championship coming up, that's going to be huge for their development. So that's kind of a reason why I have them ahead of some of the others here. And then Rahonen going to the NCAA as well, I think will be good for him. And then after Rahone, I have Cole Knuble, who had a really good sophomore season in the NCAA. So I think if he can keep that up, to your point, right, he could rise above some of the other guys because he's been really good in college. And he's kind of been one of those guys that's progressing every season and is just getting better. So it'll be interesting to see if that stops or he kind of continues to just get better and get better. And then lastly, I have Barkey here as the final center. I don't think Barkey is lesser than any of these players. Like I could arguably have Barkey above Berglund, I think, like in below Nesbitt. I just had him as the last center here just because I don't know if the Flyers are gonna consider trying him at center
Right.
or
Yeah.
if they're gonna have him as a winger. So I didn't really know. So, but I wanted to put him there as a center just for me because I think, firstly, he played center at the OHL level. Why not try him at center, in the AHL and beyond? I think you look at your center depth, that's under 25. It's not great. So you might as well try a guy that, has success at that position in juniors at center at the pro level too, and kind of see if he can recapture what he was doing in junior in the CHL for London, at the AHL level. So that's why I had him there at
He's got the
center.
two-way ability. So
Yeah, and just tenaciousness in his game, right? He's a
yeah.
really tenacious type of player, and just goes to the net, like, and that's something you can't really discount, especially with his size, right? Like he's not afraid to go to those dirty areas. And then lastly is Dorwart, as my honorable mention. Like, I think he could be a guy that like tops out to be like that fourth line, best case like third line type of guy. I think that maybe is a little generous even, but I just look at like past NCAA type signings of this nature for the Flyers. That's kind of why I have him where I have him. It's not really fair to him because I haven't watched too much of him, to be quite honest. But yeah, I think when you compare him to the other prospects that are listed and the other players that are 25 and under, I just think he doesn't have the same type of upside that a lot of these other guys might have. So that's kind of why I have him there as the honorable mention.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, so defense, I have Cam York at the top. He's the best defenseman of this group, just all around. Already hit a high level at one point in his early career, has to get
Yeah.
back there, but I don't think there's anybody toppling him. The only person who potentially could topple him this year is Jamie Drysdale, who I have at number two, who if he takes a big step forward, he is a year younger than York too. Potentially will overtake York. Like I think there is a world where Drysdale plays top pairing with like Sanheim this season. So we'll see. Emil Andre is a guy with a high ceiling, low floor type of guy. Like we don't know exactly where he is, but I loved what I saw of him when he was in the NHL. And I think he just has the overall skill. It's just really his size. You kind of look at the top three guys of this list, and they're all under 6 foot tall. York plays bigger than his size to a degree, but obviously Andre also does. But he, being 5'9", it's going to be tough for him. I do think Bonk has the higher ceiling than Andre, maybe even potentially York and Drysdale in the end, but we will see. He's the only AHL guy I have above NHL players right now, and we'll see how he transitions. I think he's still going to need the entire season in the AHL this year to acclimate. Defense is almost as hard as goaltending to transition. I do have Igor Zamula on here. This is last year. He's 25 years old. I still believe that Zamula might even have a really good season this year. He had really good numbers with Ristolainen, at least analytically. I do think a lot of that is because of Ristolainen, but I do suspect there is more to get out of Zamula. He's right in that like meaty 25 to 27 range where he could peak over the next 2 years and be like a solidified, number five in the NHL. He has decent offensive numbers, so I'm not giving up on him quite yet. This is like make or break year for me and Zamula, though, I would say. Granz, loved what I saw from him in his NHL. He got better as the season went on. I think he's a guy who could end up making the Flyers out of camp if Ristolainen is not ready, above Noah Juleson and Dan Gilbert. I think he's a perfect bottom pairing defenseman on paper. So I'm hoping he makes it. I don't think Hunter McDonald is ready, but I do still see him as an NHL bottom pairing defenseman with good skating. We will see. I would not be shocked if halfway through this year he is surpassed by both of the honorable mentions that I have, which are Spencer Gill and Carter Amico, who I both of them, I would suspect by this time next year will pass Zamula, Granz, and McDonald, and end up in the top six on this list. I believe Spencer Gill maybe has the higher ceiling overall as the type of player he is. But Carter Amico, I also see as like potential top four shutdown defenseman with mammoth size, and Spencer Gill being maybe more of like a Travis Sanheim type of guy. So I am high on those guys. I just don't know what to do with them quite yet because they're not even close to pro ready yet. At least if you look at a 12-month period. So both of them are going to need 2-3 years before they touch NHL ice. So that's why I have them as honorable mentions. But both of them I see with higher ceilings than the guys above them.
Yeah, so on my end, it's pretty similar, all the same guys, except one, just rearranged. So I start off with York. I think that's pretty much a no-brainer. We don't have to get into that, just in terms of like his all NHL impact and like with the seasons he's already had and potential upside. Drysdale is second for me as well. I just think there's a lot of upside to his game. This will be not a make or break year for him, but it'll be a big season for his development to kind of see what he can do. I think we expect him to take a bit of a step on the power play and probably offensively. That would be the ideal for him. Andre, I think, is a guy that we might see make the team.
Yeah.
Out of camp here. Like I think he arguably right like had a really good stretch last season. He tailed off, but I think that was a good kind of taste of what it'll take to make it in the NHL, and hopefully that prepares him for camp and he can kind of blow the doors off and make the team over guys like Juleson and a Gilbert, right, that are more depth options. And then after that, you have Oliver Bonk. It's going to be really interesting for him just because, first pro season, first AHL season, huge season for his development. So I think just in terms of how he's going to progress at the AHL level, we're going to be really keyed into that. And obviously being a first round pick, that upside's there, right, to be a top four type of defenseman. So we'll see how he kind of continues his progression and development from London to the Phantoms. Then after that, Helge Grans. He had a really, really good cup of coffee with the Flyers last season and was one of the top defensemen for the Phantoms, right? If you saw the exit interviews that Laperriere had and just, saw kind of the Flyers brass evaluate him in general, they're really high on him. And he's a guy that they traded for and was a piece they were kind of looking to acquire, from Colorado. So, or no, that was from LA. Yeah,
LA, LA.
yeah, my mistake. But yeah, he's a guy I think that could have a chance to be a call up for sure. Spencer Gill, I have him pretty high on my list. Reason being, I just see a lot of Sandheim in his game.
Yeah.
He's a lanky kid, has to put on a lot of weight and all, but just like the mobility, first pass, he had a really good World Junior Summer Showcase as well for Canada. He might be a guy that we see on the World Junior team for them. So anytime you're a player that makes Canada's World Junior team, that's a big deal. So yeah, that's why I had him. Above Hunter McDonald on my list. And I think he's a guy that projects to maybe, could be like a number three for you. Maybe not a top pair type guy, but like a really good number three defenseman just with his mobility. So we'll see kind of where he goes. And then after that, I have Hunter McDonald. And I agree with you, Yariv, on that he probably needs another year in the AHL just to kind of refine his game, kind of tone down some of the rawness and in terms of like some of his reads and how he can be a little bit aggressive in terms of like coming out and trying to hit a lot of players with his physicality. And then my honorable mentions are Amico, Carter Amico, and Ethan Sampson. One guy left off is Igor Zamula. I just think that the Flyers at this point kind of they probably feel that he's going to be more of like a bottom pair option, seventh pair defenseman type of player. So I just kind of omitted him from this list. But yeah.
Yeah. You mean number 7 defenseman?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like I just didn't have Zamula on the list due to that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay, let's move on to goalies. Sam Ersson at the top, obviously the most experienced of the group, and the only one to actually show flashes of potentially a starter in the NHL. He needs to rebound. We kind of anticipated this upcoming season he was going to have a really strong season. He had a pretty mediocre at best season because of injuries and up and down hockey and lack of support to some degree, but he needs to be better. But right now he stands at the top of the list. Igor Zavragin is my number 2. The highest ceiling of all the goalies that we have. Absolutely exceptional numbers in the KHL for his age group. Seems to be projecting to be a true number 1, potentially an elite goaltender in the NHL. We'll need to do it again this year, but so far, no reason to believe he won't. He could end up being top of this list by the end of the year. Alexei Kolosov, I have as 3, and my thought process is I think I saw flashes of a good goaltender in net. My problem with him was the attitude of the AHL. I think he ruined his season and a year of development by sitting out a bunch of games, by not playing the whole year in the AHL. Should have been there like 80% of the year with minor call-ups, maybe a game here or two. I think he hurt his reputation, hurt his development this year, but I do still see him as potential NHL backup. But he will have to prove it this year. Apparently, he is said that he is coming back and will be at camp and is willing to go to the AHL. So a lot rides on this season. If he does come, he'll have to obviously compete with Bjarnason and Fedotov. But I do see a scenario where the Flyers do try to rehab his image and his game. And I still believe there is something there with him. And then it goes to Bjarnason, who I do think has a higher ceiling than Kolosov. I do think he has starter potential. He's just very raw. He's more raw than Zvragin as a goaltender. So I have him at 4, but the potential is high. We will see how he does. I don't think he's going to be playing, even half of the year for the Phantoms. I could even see a little bit of ECHL time for him this year, especially if Kolosov is in the mix. But I do suspect by the end of the year he's going to be playing like starter position for the Phantoms, and he's also a guy who I think will move up on this list. And then Yaniv Peretz is a guy who's under 25. We don't know too much about him. Has some good ECHL numbers. Most likely was brought in because of the Kolosov situation. He's under 25. He probably has a little bit room to grow. I don't think he projects really more than a starter in the AHL. But if he's that's still pretty good because they can use somebody in that position in the future as well, and somebody that they maybe have for 2-3 years that could grow to be a good pro for the minor league. So we'll see what happens with Parrots, but we also couldn't do a top 7 because we don't have them. And it shows that the Flyers probably need to bring in another couple of young
Yeah,
goaltenders into the mix.
it's surprising just looking at it that they didn't draft a goalie, right?
Right.
This past draft, I guess. But yeah,
Probably
I mean,
next draft, I assume.
next draft most likely, right? If you don't do it one, you're gonna definitely do it the other, especially looking at this list. But yeah,
We
my
thought
my
we thought
list
they would this year, but they, it didn't happen.
my list is pretty similar to Yariev's. There's really only a difference with Kolosov. So I mean, Urson's the guy with the most experience, as Yariv said. He's actually had some NHL seasons and starter experience under his belt here. But to your point, make or break season for him, really. Like if he has another season like last season, he's probably going to find himself either on the way out of this organization or, you know, being in a backup role for a very foreseeable future, I would imagine. And then you have Igor Zavragin, who's probably the cream of the crop just in terms of their goaltending prospects, right? He's a guy that's playing in a number one role for Scott St. Petersburg last season at 18 years old and put up incredible numbers, incredible stats. So he's a guy that's projecting to be a potential number one. We'll have to see. I mean, the KHL obviously, isn't the same level of competition as the NHL, but we've seen in the past that when young goalies of that age usually have success at that level, it can translate pretty well to the NHL. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how he continues his development this season in the KHL. Then I had Carson Bjarnason. I think, the upside's really high. Obviously, a lot of good seasons in the WHL for Brandon. Now we'll kind of see how that translates to the AHL to the pro level. Also, looked pretty good. In some World Junior action as well, though limited. So, upside's high. I think for him, it's going to be just the pace of play, right? Like being a goalie, graduating levels, adjusting firstly to better shooters, but also just the game is going to be quicker. So being able to kind of get on your angles in a timely manner, make sure you're there, and ensuring that the puck can hit you and you're not kind of chasing the puck as it moves around and you're going side to side in your net. So we'll see kind of how he looks in the AHL. I have Kolosov after him. I mean, I think Kolosov in terms of potential upside, it is a little higher than Bjarnason, and obviously he had some great KHL seasons and KHL playoff performances. I think we saw him play pretty well in some NHL starts too. He had a couple of NHL starts where he looked good. It's just mainly attitude, right? Like he's a guy that wasn't willing to really play in AHL games or really try the AHL out more than like for a cup of coffee. So I think that in itself kind of speaks volumes. So that's kind of why I have him where he is, even if he re-enters the organization. I just think if you're going to have that attitude, it's hard to kind of expand your career and develop even more. And then Peretz is last just because we haven't seen much of him at all. So yeah.
Yeah, and we will see. He's kind of default last on the list. All right, let's go to the top 25. So this list was really hard to put together. I put this together myself. I am not 100% confident in this, but this is what I went with for now. So I have Michkov number one, Tyson Forrester number two, Zegras number three, and that one's I can see debatable. Cam York four, Martone five, Drysdale six, Luchanko seven, Sam Ersson eight, Igor Zavragin nine, Bobby Brink 10, Alex Bump 11, Emil Andre 12, Jack Nesbitt 13, Alexei Kolosov 14, Igor Zamula 15, Helge Grans 16, Denver Barkey 17, Carson Bjarnason 18, Samu Tuomal 19, which probably is not accurate at this point because it changed Tuomal, but actually maybe it is. Nikita Gabrankin 20, Hunter McDonald 21, Jack Berglund 22, Spencer Gill 23, Jack Murtag 24, Carter Amico 25, and then honorable mention at 26, Heike Verhonen. Now, I would say like immediately what sticks out is the Tyson Forrester, Trevor Zegras. I don't know where you sit with this. Like maybe Zegras should be number two on this list.
I would probably put Zegras there just because he's had 60-point seasons. That's my
Yeah,
thoughts.
again like offensive
But
output, yes,
Foresters are also had 20 goal seasons back to back too. So
yes, and he's on the upswing, and he's also, in my opinion, at least elite defensively, especially for his age group.
yeah,
So
I think cachet and like name, Zegras would be second, but I think if you take into account like the defensive aspects and the actual intricacies of the hockey, it could be
yeah,
Forster. Like you could go either or, so that's a tough one.
yeah, exactly. There's a few of these that are tough. Like yes, Porter Barton.
Martone and York's tough too, just because you have York, like he's had 2 seasons like playing top fair D, doing pretty decent. Like Martone, he projects to be a top line winger, and I'm sure like we all want him to be that, but he's not there yet, right? So it's kind of like you're putting guys at the top of the list is tough because you have guys that have some NHL experience
Yeah.
with guys that have no NHL experience, so it's hard to gauge,
Yes,
right?
which is why I don't love these lists. But I wanted to do it anyway.
Hey, it's
Uh,
fun, right? Why
yeah,
not?
and like, I have Luchanko above Airson. That's also kind of weird because Luchanko hasn't really made the NHL yet, but he's kind of borderline.
First round
Um,
pick. Yeah.
and then that's why like Zavragin is not higher on the list because it's like he's a goaltender and they're like X factors
You
in
never know what's gonna
general,
happen.
like
Yeah.
you think he's going to be a star, but is he going to be a
Well, you
star?
could argue Brinks, had NHL time and played in the league for 2 seasons. You could have him higher, but you could argue that Vragan has number one goalie upside, which also puts him, it's a hard list. Now that we're kind of
Yeah.
getting into the
Yes.
top, yeah, like the conversation of it on the show,
Yeah, and that's
you
the
could
thing.
see
It's
why it's difficult,
yeah,
right?
and it's like a balance of where they are now plus where they're going. Like,
Yeah.
maybe Bump ends up being better than Brink, but like Brink could also be
How
higher on this
uh
list.
how about we do this? So now that you're looking at it, let's give ourselves both two things. There's two things you could change on this list now that you look at it. What would you change?
Um, Probably drop Tuamala a little bit and uh maybe probably move up Barkey.
Okay. Where would you move? You'd move Barkey past Grons?
I would move Barkey past Kolosov, I think.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
That makes
he's that
sense.
high on my list personally.
I would do okay, so I'm high on Grabankin, but anybody who's listening to this show probably knows that. I think he's a guy that is going to surprise some people.
Yeah.
So I would have Grabankin um ahead of Tuamala, Bjarnason, and Barkey, just because he's had some AHL time. He's looked pretty
Yeah.
good for the Leafs and looked good for the Phantoms.
And he did
Um,
very well at the KHL level.
yeah, so I would have him there. That's the one change I would make. Um, and then after that,
Spencer Gill,
uh,
maybe.
No, I think I would just drop Kolosov a lot. Like, I don't think I would have Kolosov 15, and that's just my bias. I just think his time, not to say it's
Yeah.
done with the organization, but I just think that there's a lot of guys that probably aren't acting the way he's acting. So I'd probably put him more like, um, I'd say probably
Near the
like
bottom.
at 21. So
Okay.
like if you had Gurbankin above Barkey, Bjarnason, and Tuamala, then you would drop Kolosov down and kind of put Bjarnason above him, just because I had
Okay.
Bjarnason above Kolosov in terms of the goalies in general.
So
So
maybe we,
so
yeah,
yeah,
maybe we revisit this like later on in the year after we've seen some of the guys play and we'll see,
definitely that would be fun. Yeah.
yeah, and see what this list should actually look like.
What I think we should do is we could have it like maybe like every 25 games or something. We maybe revisit this at
Yeah.
the end of end of one of
Or
our
even
shows and say, what do
even
we
halfway
think?
through the season, we could do
Yeah.
like at the All-Star, well, the Olympic break, not an All-Star break.
Thank
Um,
God.
yeah. Yeah, nobody cares about the All-Star game anyway. But yeah, so we took a crack at it, top 25. Not my favorite list. Probably needs
But
another
hey, let
iteration,
us
but
let us know what you think of this list that we put together.
for sure.
Like both the lists, if you have a top 25, put it in the comments. We're interested
Yeah,
to see like your thoughts.
good
Or if
call.
you think that there's somebody on this list that we underrated that we should have had higher, somebody we should have dropped, like let us know what you all think. Because as you can see when we were talking it over, there's so much to consider with all these guys, right?
Yeah,
You
there's so
could
much nuance.
Yeah, definitely. That's the thing with these lists. A lot of it is nuance. What have you seen of these guys? What do you think about the ceiling for a prospect versus like a guy who's actually in the NHL and having an impact right now? I think that's the hardest part for me is like, how do you gauge a guy that's in the NHL actively against a guy who you're wanting to be that in the NHL, but has not yet actually even played really in the league? I think
Yeah.
that's the toughest with these lists, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun to put together though.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. That's it for this show. Just to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for notification. Get notified when we release these episodes. For the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes. Give us a rating and a follow. If you can do those things, that is the best way to support this show. So if you've made it this far and you have not done it, please do so now. We humbly appreciate it. And also, shout out to our sponsor, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's. They have that one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Shout out to Public Summit Adjusters. Go to them for your insurance adjustment needs. They will help facilitate the process between you and your insurance company. Make sure you get the best claim, best deal possible. Again, 215-752-0560, Public Summit Adjusters. And also shout out to sportspider.com. They are our partners. Our stuff is pinned at the top. They aggregate content from all over the internet for all of sports, but definitely the Flyers and the NHL. So make sure to check out sportspider.com. The link is in the description for both the video and audio versions of this show. Vasili, do you have anything to leave our audience with?
No, just appreciate the listens. Obviously, we're getting back into the busier period.
Yep.
So keep on listening and check out Flyers Nitty Gritty. There's going to be a lot of content on the website in terms of articles and things getting you ready for the upcoming Flyer season. So give the site a read and a check.
Hell yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We really appreciate you guys. We'll be back next week to talk about the upcoming rookie games. Hopefully, there's some good news about the team that we can share for that. We love you all. And remember, always stay gritty.